Okay, Academy FM friends, how's it going? This is Infinite here. This is going to be my first time streaming on the site for you guys. So today I'm going to be running through my whole project file for my track Alone. Did a poll earlier this week. That's kind of what people were most excited to see. So I'm going to go through this entire track for the next couple hours here. And yeah, answer some questions you guys have. I'll kind of go over as much basic stuff as advanced stuff as I can for everybody with different skill levels and different questions. So, yeah, I guess I'll get right into it here. So basically for like the first 16 bars of this track's intro, pretty straightforward. I'll just play that real quick. So for this first intro pattern here, besides just having an impact layered, so this first pattern here, just these chords and this pad are running. So for this first sound here, just this little pluck sound, it's just a super basic. I think it was just a Harmor preset that I tweaked a little bit. I won't go crazy in depth on how to make every single sound because this is something you could just YouTube in like seconds, so it's probably not going to be worth me to go into it. Basically, it's just a really standard pluck sound with a low pass filter with the frequency cranked all the way up. So basically, it's allowing everything in, and then I just automated the volume here for the pluck, so you can hear. As I play it, the sound decreases as the little shape here goes down as well. So and as far as EQing that goes, I've got a Fruity Convolver on it. It's just I like the Convolver. It's kind of like a nice alternative in FL Studio for just using the reverb, and it's kind of nice. I've got the dry all the way up and the wet at, what do we got here? minus 35 dB. And it's just it fills it up a little bit. Here's it. I'll play it without. So it's pretty bland, and then you throw this on. So it's just a little bit nicer there. And the way I've got it playing in the intro here, just the chord sound here. So I've got it with a low pass filter here. So it's you can see it automate as the first 16 bars of the intro kind of. I generally have it just kind of start the track and kind of fade in a lot of the elements, so you can see the low pass filter is being automated. And that's using both these two automation clips here. I've got one for the intro chords and for the pad as well. I'll play the pad real quick for you here as well. So this is another Harmor preset that I basically just tweaked because I'm not as well-rounded with Harmor as I am with stuff like Serum. So that was just another kind of sound that I altered a little bit. Here's how I've EQ'd the pad too. I've just low cut it pretty hard at 100 hertz, boosted the highs quite a bit because in the patch I'll show you, it's got a lot of filtering on it. And then this is the same thing here. It's being automated. I brought this automation clip in a little bit later. Here's this sound as well. I believe it's just a Harmor preset that it doesn't want to show up. That I altered a little bit. It's got a low pass filter as well with the frequency about 40% at that. And again, I've automated the or it's not automation. It's just you can draw these little envelope shapes within Harmor. So it's just the volume again. So when I play the sound, you can hear the volume decreases as it goes along. So before I keep going here with the intro and the actual elements, I'll go over my master channel EQ because that's something that a lot of people seem to have questions with sometimes. As far as mastering goes, I am probably as basic as they come. I've just got an OTT compressor here. with the settings. The depth are at 50% the time. Well, you can see it, 136, and then the gain 5.5. Basically, this is not the kind of mastering thing that you would do on a finished track. This would be something that you want to do. You want to have on your master the whole time, and that way you can actually mix and master as you go. Because if you just throw this chain on at the end of your track, it's not going to sound very good. So I've got the OTT on first, and then we've got a parametric EQ2. All that's doing here is it's rolling off the high end a bit. Just I really kind of aim to be a little tame with my highs in all my tracks, because nothing really turns me off from a track more than the high end being overly harsh. Yeah, so I've got that rolled off, and then just the very, very low end as well. Then we've got a limiter. This is just with, actually I'm pretty sure this is the default settings of a Fruity limiter. All this guy is doing is making sure that our master isn't going over 0 dB. So so your master's not going to be clipping. And then this is Ozone 4. I actually don't use this for anything on my actual track. What I use it for is referencing my track with this analyzer here. I'll go over that a little bit more, because that's kind of something I do towards the end of a track when I'm actually mixing it down. So yeah, we'll keep going here with the intro. So those first 16 bars is just that chord sound and that pad playing with just a cymatic sweep and an impact right at the start. I actually don't even have that linked anywhere in my mixer, so that's just, there's no EQ on that, nothing like that. My sweeps, if you're interested, the way I EQ them, I always just do a low cut at around 300 hertz, 350 hertz, whatever. There's not going to be an overly large amount of low end in those kind of sounds anyways, but I just do it because it all adds up, and it's just going to make it clean in the end. So for the second 8 bars of this intro here, that's again when I kind of start to actually bring in more elements of the entire intro. So right here we can see this is when I start bringing in this little melody. Oops, that should not be there, my bad. This is just another, again, really, really simple harmor patch that I won't go over the entire thing on how to make it, because we don't have the time for that. But it's just another preset that I tweaked with. Basically, you can do a lot with just the like the volume envelope in harmor as far as making quick and plucky sounds go. So this one you can see, it's just a really quick envelope that's kind of cutting the sound right away. And the way I've got that coming in the intro here, again, just like the pad and the chord sounds, I've got a low pass filter filtering it in. So I'll show you how that automates it. So we can see it's just slowly letting more of the higher frequencies in. I like doing that quite a bit. I find that automating things in with a low pass filter is just a nice way to not, bring in too much of the sound at once, kind of thing. one other element, the only other thing I've got going on in that first 16 bars, this intro, is just this this little sample here. This is from one of AU5's sample packs. It's just this nice little sonar effect. And the original sample is an F sound, so this track I wrote in F sharp, so I just pitched it up 100 cents to bring it from an F to an F sharp. And I've got that just, it's this volume automation that kind of fades it out from the start of the 9th bar to the 17th bar here. So that's pretty much the first 16 bars of that intro. Just really simple pad sound with a pluck sound, a couple cymatics effects, and yeah, just automating it with the filter kind of brings it all in nicely. So from the start of the 17th bar here, this is when we actually kind of bring in all the elements in the intro. So those filters are going to be, they're no longer low passing. The pluck or the pad, they're going to be playing in full. And I've also brought in the vocal here as well as the sub. So I'll show you how I EQ'd the vocal. This was just a really nice vocal from, I don't even remember where the pack was. I got it somewhere on Splice, but just a really nice sounding pack to begin with, so I didn't have to do an overly ton of processing of the vocal. So I've just got a bit of reverb with some EQing on it, as well as a delay. You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here. So there's not a ton going on with this reverb. You can see the settings. That might actually be like the stock Fruity Reverb 2 setting. I just turned down the wet a bit because I didn't want it to be overpowering. And then for the EQ, I just kind of cut a bit of the highs because with the OTT being on my master, it might have just cranked it up a little more than I wanted. So I've just rolled the really high end here, cut that a bit, and the kind of the upper mids here, just cut those a little as well, and then, like I do with pretty much everything, low cut it. Low cut this vocal here at 185 hertz. And then Fruity delay with it, it's turned down quite a bit over here. You can see I've got the mix at 15% here just because I didn't want it to be, you know, delaying like crazy. And it's just the stock delay settings. All I've done is crank the time right here up to 8 of the top left corner here. That's I've just got that at 8 up. This shows you your value up here. So that's going to give it this kind of delay. You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here. So it's not too much going on, but it just kind of fills up the vocal quite a bit rather than just being like just completely dry sounding. You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here. It's pretty subtle, but it does a nice job. And then I've just got, for whatever reason, I put another EQ here to put another low cut on it and just roll off the highs a little bit. I definitely could have just done that with the one EQ, but I went ahead and did it this way, so that's fine. You don't gotta go home. You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here. So now I've got everything playing here in that part of the intro, and the next thing I did was I brought in the sub here. They say you don't gotta go home. I'll actually open my patch before I go over how I actually process the sub here, because I had a lot of people hit me up saying that they really wanted to see how I did my sub, and I do it super easy, so I'll go over that. So my sub bass patch Excuse me, sorry, I'm just getting better from being sick here. I've got two instances of my sub here. You can see my main sub, I've just got the volume. I just leave it at 78%, which is basically when you add a new channel in FL Studio, that's what it's going to be set at anyways. And then I've got this one below it, which is my intro sub, which I always like to crank my intro sub down quite a bit from my main sub that I'm going to have throughout the drop, because I find doing that, once your drop hits and you get that bigger, fatter, louder sub, it's just kind of a more in-your-face, more impact kind of thing. But all my sub-bass patch is so I use the 3X OSC in FL Studio, and if here's the settings. But if we open up I'll show you how to make it real quick. If we just open up a new instance of 3X OSC, so all you're doing, you take the stock preset and you just crank down all three oscillators to 0 for the coarse pitch. And that's it. That's all I do for my sub. I used to use Massive and Serum, but I worked with my friend Conus a lot, and he used this, and it sounded just as fat, if not better, than my subs, and it used less CPU. So I started using this. And as far as the processing goes, it's also relatively simple. I've got a multi-band compressor on my sub bass, and I've just bypassed the high and the mid band here. You can see this little, it's got an A, M, and B option for each band, which is active, muted, and bypass. So I just bypass completely the high and the mid because we're dealing with sub bass, so they're just completely unnecessary. And then the low band, these are the settings. Got the threshold at minus 2.9 dB, the ratio at just 4:1 ratio. The knee is all the way down. Attack release completely at 0. And the gain, you can kind of do whatever you want. I've got this one set at 6 dB. And then these settings here as well, just these frequency knobs. This actually, it might be just the stock settings too. And yeah, that's it as far as the compressor goes. And then we've just got a EQ on it as well. This is an older track, so I do my subs a little differently now. But for this one, we've got I've got this, like, it's a super high cut up at 400. But the way I've got it is I've boosted around 60 hertz here with this low shelf to kind of just really pump up the lows, and then up here I just raise it a bit. Basically, this was done to just to my ear. I just kind of EQ'd to what sounded good. So you probably won't be able to hear much of the sub if I play it right now through streaming, but you can see where the sub is hitting and the way I've EQ'd it. So that's the way I did this sub. Like I said, super easy, nothing really overly tricky about it. So from bars 17 to 24, we're kind of having our entire intro where it's actually all filled up and it's nice. There's not an overly excessive amount going on, but it's full.
You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here. No, I don't wanna be alone in the world out there.
We've also got, I've automated the volume on my intro sub here, so it's a little quieter here for this part of the intro, and then as soon as we get to that 25th bar here, where we're actually going to start our build up, I've got the volume automating a bit. Again, I do that just for that kind of effect that, once a new section of the drop comes, it's just a little more impactful. So it kind of feels like as it's progressing in this intro is that, the sound's actually getting bigger and it's just more impact for when the build up starts here. got a few more things going on in the build-up here, aside from that intro melody, pluck, and the chords all playing. I brought in this little percussion loop. It's just a vengeance loop. I've got that EQ'd like this, so I just rolled off the low lows a bit. Sorry, the very low end of that, just because there's not overly much to begin with. But I've got the kick playing in the build up as well, so I just didn't want that to clash too much. We brought in this vocal chop here, which I just did a little automation right here. I'll show you to kind of ease it in and transition from that first section of the drop into this build. So you'll hear this vocal fade in relatively smoothly here. And all I've done that with is with just automating the volume of the sample. You can see right here in the levels adjustment area of this sample, it's just going to crank it up. Super easy to do that, and it just kind of makes it smooth and sound good. Again, with that second section of the drop, just to fill it out, I've just got more cymatic samples, white noise, because the cymatic samples are great for this kind of thing. You know, you can spend a lot of time making your own sweeps, making your own noises. If you're into that kind of thing, that's cool. I prefer just grabbing samples because I like doing it that way. I don't really think it's worth my time to make a lot of white noise samples, but these are great for filling up the track. I also, something I didn't mention before, with how I process the sweeps and stuff. So in FL Studio, every mixer channel it's also got this stereo separation knob on every channel. So I always take my sweeps channel and I spread it to 50%. So that's just kind of, push those white noise and those sweep sounds to more of the outer edges of your stereo mix and kind of make them a little less present with the mono, a little more on the sides. It's just a preference thing that I like to do. This is also where we first bring in my kick drum. I'll go over that real quickly, how I've done that. So this is This is just a Cymatics kick drum sample. This is from the Terror drums because I love the Terror drums. They're awesome. And I haven't done an overly excessive amount of processing. No, I've just done... So just for my EQ, I just completely cut the kick right at 38 hertz here, and then I kind of boosted it quite a bit here at 83 hertz. That's just kind of gonna punch the kick a lot more with that low end, and then I just boosted the highs a bit. Here, I'll just play the kick. We can look at it on the analyzer here. So you can really see now with that boost in the low end, it's punching a lot more. So relatively simple. Again, that was all just a preference. That's just how I liked that kick to sound. That's with the EQ. That's with the turn off. So it's pretty minor, but it's just the way I like to do it. The other thing we've got going on in the intro now is just crash cymbals. I've just done really easy stuff with those. With all my crash cymbals, we've got a reverse crash. If anyone doesn't know how to actually do this, because this was something I didn't know for a while when I started producing. So I just take my regular crash cymbal sample, and if I want to make a reverse crash that is essentially the exact same crash, just reverse, you can just... So I have a new sample, and then top left corner of the sample in the playlist, just hit this. Hit make unique. So that's going to make it a new sample. And then just in this window here, you just hit reverse. So now you've got a reverse crash that is gonna, sit perfectly with your crash cymbal because it's literally the exact same sample going into itself. So that's something else we've got going in this section. Processing, I do the same thing with my cymbals. I like to spread those a little bit on the stereo separation knob. I just spread my cymbal 30%. Yeah, 30%. Again, just to kind of widen out the higher elements in the mix. I also spread my hi-hats. You can see this one. I spread those 50% as well. And yeah, so that's the cymbals. So we've got the kick, the cymbals, our pads, our vocal, this little drum loop. The drum loop actually is just, it's not automating anything. It's not being low passed. It's just playing straight as is with the vocals and stuff. And then I've got, again, you've got another cymatic sample in here, just a riser. So you can see I've EQ'd that. That's just playing really basically. It's on the same channel as all my sweeps, so it's just spread a little bit with that stereo separation knob, 50%. Actually here with the drums, I'll go over my side chaining technique because this is the first part of the track that actually, has the full kick kind of coming in. So the way I do my side chaining, I actually do not use a compressor at all. I do, basically it's volume automation. I'll open up my mixer here and you'll actually be able to see. So this is my side chain channel. So everything I link to this side chain volume channel right here is going to be sidechained by my drums. So I have my kick drum right here, and my snare drum right here. I've linked those two channels in my mixer to this channel here that I've called SC controller, sidechain controller. And the way you do that, you click the channel you want. So I've got this one, and you would right click this knob here, and you would just click reset on that, and that'll link it to that channel. So I've done that with my kick and my snare because that's when I'm gonna want my, whether it's my synth, my sweeps, whatever I link to the volume to be ducked. So like I said, everything I link to this sidechain volume channel here will duck when my kick or snare hits. And the way I do that, basically, you've got all your channels in your mixer. So I've got my bass group going to that volume, my sub, obviously, chants, offbeat, pretty much everything that I want to duck, I've got linked to that. So you can do, if there's elements you want sidechain, obviously you could do the same. Anything you don't want sidechain, just don't link it to that track and it won't duck. So the way I actually have the sidechaining set up is I use Fruity Peak Controller. This is a FL stock plugin. So we open that up, and you could just copy these settings. Your bass level, I've got at 20%. Actually, the LFO, you're not going to worry about. That has nothing to do with what we're doing in here, so you won't have to touch anything here. Volume in here, you want to drag that all the way down because that's saying how much of the volume is actually going to be ducked. So I like it to duck all the way, so it's pretty dramatic and you can notice it. And then the tension I've got all the way cranked to the left, the decay all the way to the right. And when we play it, actually got this automated here in my intro. So in this automation clip here, I have my sidechain controller, the peak amount. I've got it lower because I don't want all of the elements of my intro to be ducking as much as I do for my sub and my bass synths throughout the drop, because obviously in the drop that's going to be, it's going to kind of need to be more than that, a lot more dramatic, because there's a lot more going on, there's a lot more bass and stuff. So I've got the bass level here, or the peak, sorry, automated lower. So you can see the bass level is lower, or the volume lower is not as drastic. It's not all the way down here like it will be for the drop. And you can actually see it side chaining whenever the kick is hitting. The reason it's not kicking on, or it's not side chaining on every single kick drum, is because I've made 2 kick drum channels that are identical. This is my main kick. It's connected to the side chain controller because that's the kick that I'm gonna have going throughout my entire track. And then this kick, it's an identical channel. The only difference is I don't have it connected to that side chain controller, because when I have this kick hit, I don't want it to sidechain. So in this build up here, when the kick drum starts doubling up and going faster in the build, I don't necessarily want it hitting on every hit. So I've just cloned the kick drum sample here. This one. This drum here and this drum here, see the 2 different samples? As you can see in the top left corner here, this is kick number 11, this is kick 10. They're the exact same kick, they're processed the exact same. The only difference is the one kick will not be side chaining, as I'll show you here. See, it's not side chaining every kick drum hit, because if I do that and I have every kick in that build trigger the side chain, you're not going to hear anything else, because it's just going to be constantly ducking. So the way I like doing it is I just like doing it on every fourth or every first beat, and that I find gives a nice pumping effect through the build and all that kind of stuff. So you can see that again here, the way it's working. Relatively simple, but something that you may not have thought about. And something I also like to do for my builds is the 4 beats right before this pre-drop vocal. Something that's really, really subtle that you probably wouldn't notice, but I really like doing. I'll automate the volume of my kick drum just ever so slightly for those last 4 beats before the pre-drop, to just kind of go lower a little bit, and then bring it back up as soon as the kick on this hits, because it's just kind of a nice little, very subtle dramatic effect that the kick will be building, and then it'll really, really subtly duck in volume, and then that hit right at the pre-drop vocal is going to be a lot more dramatic. That's just also a little trick that you may not have thought of, but I've got some cool results doing. You can also do the same thing. Like, I like to do my kick drum builds up with a low pass filter a lot of the time, and I'll do the same thing. Like, I'll automate the low pass filter all the way up, and then those four beats right before the drop, I'll kind of automate the filter to cut a lot of the kick drum, just so when it brings it in on this hit, it's really dramatic and just kind of hits you in the chest a little more. So for this little pre-drop vocal here, a lot of tracks will just have a straight vocal and then the drops will go. A lot of the time that works really well. For this particular one, this is one trick I do a lot, actually, that you guys might think is cool. I like to do a reverse kick before a new section or right before the drop, to kind of suck into our first kick drum hit. So the way that sounds is like this. So it's just kind of like a sucking sound, and it's really easy to do, but I feel like it makes a lot of difference, and it makes like that first hit sound really big. We can A/B it here. I'll play the drop without it and with it.
I don't wanna be alone. I don't wanna be alone. I don't wanna be alone.
So it's kind of subtle, but it's also kind of not. If you're listening or watching on monitors or good headphones, you'll be able to notice that low end suction kind of thing is actually really cool, and it makes that first hit sound a lot bigger. And the way I do this, it's super simple. So I'll just clone our kick drum, just make it a new sample, and then I just open up the sample in here. I hit reverse. That's gonna have it just like that. The way I usually like to do them, that should not be there. I like to do them either 1 beat or 2 beats. So I like hitting the time here, right click that. Just hit 2 beats. That'll stretch it perfectly. So that reverse sample, 2 beats long. So I could put this beats before that first kick. That's when you want to do them. You kind of want to do them either leaning into the first kick drum, or it sounds cool if you do it before a snare as well. See how that kind of sucks into it and makes it sound pretty, just more impactful, I guess. And then just if you do that, you want to make sure that this reverse kick is not sidechain, or it's not set to the same kick channel, or else that's going to trigger your sidechain, and you don't really want that to do that. So just make sure it's connected to a different mixer channel, or no mixer channel at all, whatever you want.
I don't wanna be alone.
And the one other thing we've got going in this pre-drop vocal is just this little this is just a sample from a Getter sample pack. The way I've done it here is this is the original sample. So I just took that one for the first 3 beats, and then I cloned it and I reversed it. So it's like the 3 drum hits, do-do-do-do, and then I've reversed the second one, so it just kind of does the complete opposite. Just kind of does that, and I believe I've got that automated with a filter. Yeah, so I've just got an EQ on that drum filter, and I've low passed that as well. You can see here. Just kind of nice and quickly. It starts out with the sample just being really muffled, and there's not much mid or high coming in, and then it kind of brings it in and then goes back down. So it's just kind of a nice way to transition from your build up into that drop section. So now we can get into the fun stuff here. So I guess I'll go over just the way I've EQ'd the drums and everything first, and then we can dive into a little bit of the sound design, and then my sub bass and how I actually get the movement of all my sub to go with my sounds. A lot of people were asking me about that, which I was kind of flattered. It's super simple to do, but if you would like to see how I do it, I will go in depth on that. So kind of went over my kick drum already, just super basic. You can see a bunch of stuff in my mixer actually is clipping, or looks like it's clipping. Obviously, I do not mix, I guess, exactly how, in quotes, the right way to do it is. This is just the way that I do things, and it sounds good to me. But yeah, so I've got the kick. We already went over that. Just the EQ. You'll see my kick drum is I've took the stereo knob, and it's completely to the right, completely merged, which means that channel is now going to be giving a completely mono signal, because ideally you want the really low end of your track to always be completely in mono. So I mono my kick drum, my sub bass. That other kick drum channel here is also mono. So those are usually pretty much the only elements that I completely put into mono. And that's just, again, here with the stereo knob. Crank it all the way to the right till it says 100% merged. That's what you're going to do there. My hi-hat pattern here is super simple. We've got this ride cymbal here. Again, that's a Cymatics drum sample because they're the best. Another Cymatics hi-hat there, and then this is from another pack. Usually for my hi-hat patterns, I'll take like a nice kind of open taily kind of cymbal like that, and that's going to be like, I'll do that every beat kind of thing. And then I'll take like a kind of like a boring, I guess, hi-hat, just kind of a little pingy or like filler one like this. So there's not a huge amount of tail or big sound to it. And I'll take one more open hi-hat. And then the way I'll just put them together, whatever sounds good. So this is just a quick little pattern I did that goes pretty much for the entire drop. And the way I've got those EQ'd, I actually don't even have, sometimes I'll put just a tiny bit of reverb on my hats. I didn't for this track. I've just got those low cut at, well, actually, this is weird. I usually high cut them a lot more, but obviously in this track I didn't, but there's not a ton coming through there anyways. As you can see, that's just the way I've done them here. And I've also got those spread a little bit, like I mentioned before, at 50%. On the stereo knob here, 50% spread. So then that's the kick, that's the hats, and then my snare drum here. That's another Cymatic snare because they're the best. And really, you don't need to do a ton to the Cymatic samples. They sound great as is, and yeah. So the way I've just got an EQ on that snare drum, I've just cut the high a little bit around 3,000 hertz here, and then boosted it at 233 hertz here. That's where you're getting that nice the thickness and that nice punch of the snare. So I just boosted that how much should we boost that here? 4 dB it looks like. And you can see the side chain over here is being triggered with every kick and snare drum hit. So everything that's nice, that's how I want it. So now we'll get into the actual drop here. I think a lot of producers, when they're starting writing tracks and they're actually starting to they're starting to make some cool sounds or starting to have some solid mix downs and stuff, they'll write a drop and they'll have some wicked synths and that kind of thing, but it'll still sound kind of just empty to them. And I think that kind of stuff is just like the filler stuff in a drop is just as important, if not as important, as your actual bass synths. Because if like you got a lot of cool sounds playing throughout the track and it still kind of sounds boring or empty, obviously no one's going to like that. So quickly I'll just go over what I've got playing in the background of this drop that's not the bass synths. So I'll just mute all my basses. So the first thing we hear is this offbeat pluck. Relatively simple, but if we mute this in the drop, it's gonna sound a lot more boring. This is just, I'm pretty sure it's the same patch I used for that intro pluck. Just, I get another Harmon preset. I've just got the volume envelope here. I've drawn it so the sound doesn't really drag on a lot, it cuts. And the crude low pass filter, so not a lot of frequencies are coming through. Again, I won't dive too much into this because I feel like you guys want to learn more about the bass synths and my subs and the mixdown type stuff. The way I've got this EQ'd is we've got that convolver on here again. So it's super boring sound without that, but this convolver, which is, I don't know if I mentioned before, it's a stock FL Studio plugin, so any FL users will have this. It's just a really nice alternative to reverb. And I've got this low cut here, pretty steep, so not a lot of low end is coming. And I've got the highs boosted a lot because with that low pass filter I've got on the Harmor plugin, not a lot is coming through. So I just boosted the high end to give it a little bit of presence. There's still not a ton coming through, or any really above like 10,000 hertz here. There's nothing, and you can just see it's a little bit higher here. So that's that pluck. And like I said, if we mute that for the drop, it doesn't sound nearly as full, or I guess just warm. So it's fairly noticeable. It fills up the pattern quite a bit. The other thing we've got going through that drop is this chant here. Oh, where is it going? So this is really simple. I'll show you how I process and tune my chants. That's something that not a lot of guys, especially starting out, you don't really care or pay attention to having out of tune, chants or little sounds in the drop. Which is actually, it's a big deal if there's something out of tune that's not going to sound nice. So this is just a little vocal sample here. All I've got on there is just an EQ. I just low cut those at around 120 just so there's not anything coming in, muddying up our low signal at all. And then just a little bit of fruity reverb. That's just the stock preset that I've lowered to 20%, and then quite a bit in the actual mixer plugin here. I've got the mix level at 20% there. And this is how I actually tune my chant samples. I use Edison, which is a stock FL plugin. Let's go. So I just swapped that out. So this is a nice way you can tune your sample, is whatever channel you've got your chants or your little sounds on, open up a Edison here. Where is it? Edison, here we go. So basically Edison is like a little, you can record audio, you can you can manipulate audio in here. I use it pretty much just for this feature. So we've got our sample playing. I'll show you how the original sample sounds. So again, I said I wrote this track in F sharp. So if we have this chant playing throughout our drop, ideally we want it to be in F sharp. So if I don't know the pitch of this sample just by ear and it sounds kind of off, like, we can actually check. So to me right now, that automatically sounds like it's not sitting how it should and kind of sounds weird. So I want to check the tuning of this chant sample. So I would just highlight, because we're just going to want to play our actual chant sample. Open up Edison, and then we're going to hit record. And we're going to change this to on play, because that way when the sample starts playing, it will record the sound and we'll be able to kind of take a look at it. Interesting, okay. Sorry about that, my session decided to crash. Let's open that up again. FL sometimes has a bit of a hard time when it's running with OBS, just with CPU, so we'll open that up again. Okay, so we'll go back to that chant section in this track here, and we're going to tune the chant sample. So we've got our basic chant sample here. It doesn't sound quite right to us, so we want to tune that so it's in key. So we want to turn this into an F sharp. So we'll check the original tuning of that sample. So again, you want to hit record and change this to on play. Why? Okay, we don't have to do that. For some reason, FL Studio doesn't want to handle Edison. Which is weird. Edison is like the most CPU-friendly plugin, so that's interesting. Okay, so third time's the charm here. We're tuning this vocal sample. We've got Edison. We can just leave it on input, hit the record button. So now we can stop it. This is going to be that chant sample. So when we play it, when you hit the play there, that's our chant sample. So it's showing us the audio. And now if we want to find the pitch of that, again, this is for guys like me. I'm not great at telling the pitch of things by ear. So it's got this nice feature in Edison. Just go to the start of your audio and right click. Okay, I don't know why this is crashing with Edison. It's the easiest plugin. Okay, I guess Edison doesn't really want to work with us and handle the CPU, but what you do with that plugin, the way I've got it in this session is already set up, so I can show you. You can right-click your audio in here, and you'll be able to right-click it and go detect pitch regions. I'll open this up in a new session at the end of the stream here so that it won't crash, and I can actually show you how to do it. This session is pretty hefty. There's a lot going on, so that's probably why it's not wanting to do it for us. But I'll go over that after properly. Sorry again about that. So back to the drop, we've got our chant, we've got our offbeat, and then we've got all of our synths and our drums. So this is where it'll start getting fun. I'm sure a lot of you guys will like the sound design stuff. So I'll go in depth. I won't make every sound from scratch because there's probably not enough time, but I will show you how I've done things. So first of all, I'll explain how I've got my synths set up in my mixer and what they're rooted to. This is usually what I will do. Usually I'll do all my synths on one channel, and I start the effects chain with an OTT compressor. Just with these settings, depth cranked up to 100 because we want them very compressed and very thick. And the time's at 199% with the in gain at 0, out gain at 12 dB. The next thing I do in my synth effects chain is I use this dimension expander plugin, which is free from X for Records, the same company that does Serum. and the OTT. It's available for free on their site if you don't have it. It's relatively simple. All I do with this, I put it on after the OTT. It just kind of adds a very, very subtle effect to the synth, just kind of make them a little bigger. It's really, really easy to overdo it with this plugin. That's why you can see I've got the dry wet sitting here at 54. Up here is the amount it wants to give us. And then the size is barely cranked up. Like 2.5%, 3%. Like it's very, very subtle, because if you go and crank your dimension expander on anything really, it's just it's gonna sound really wide and really just not punchy and kind of thin the wider it gets, and it's gonna sound terrible in mono, which is not what you want. So I just do that really subtly for my synths. And then I've got this EQ here. This is something my friend Conus actually showed me. It's how he processed all the synths in the collabs when we first started working. So I throw this EQ right on my synth bus, right at the start of the chain after the dimension expander. And it just it low cuts your synths here. I've got it rolled off at like 120 hertz here. And just the shape. So it's kind of boosting a tiny bit of the lows after the low cut. And then the lower mids rolls them out a bit. And yeah, it's just kind of a weird shape. But he had great results with it when we were working together, so I started doing it, and it was good. If you want to copy and paste exactly everything, I can show you. So we've got this low pass on here. This low cut is sitting at 120 hertz with a 16%. Yeah, 16% bandwidth. And then for our second EQ here, we've got that sitting at 176 hertz with just a hardly even a cut, a 0.08 dB cut there. And then our third band here at 411 hertz, just with a boost of 1.1 dB with a bandwidth of 39%. Our fourth band here sitting at 806 hertz, bandwidth of 69%, and that is cutting minus 3.4 dB. You can see these levels up here in the top left corner here when I'm looking at them. And then our fifth band here is just a really narrow spike at 2,275 hertz with a bandwidth of 19%. And that's boosted 1.4 dB. Our sixth band sitting at 9118 hertz with a bandwidth of 69%. And we're cutting that negative 6.1 dB. And then this high shelf here, or sorry, this low pass here is just kind of, again, rolling off right at the high end at 20,000 hertz, and it's got a bandwidth of 31%. And this is just the click this and go to type, and you would want to make that a low pass. So yeah, that's the EQ on there. The reason I've got two more EQs on this chain is you can see these two are turned off. That's because I automate those a little bit differently. You'll be seeing this pattern. I think I've got one automating for one particular bass. Okay, not in that first section, but it'll come in later. So I guess I'll hop into a bit of the sound design here for this first section of this drop. Okay, so for this first growl patch, I've used Serum for everything in this track as far as the basses go. So yeah, here's how it sounds with no pitch bending or anything like that. It's a pretty, I guess, relatively simple growl sound, I guess. Not a ton going on. So I've used the one of the wavetables I've used here. This is definitely one of the Cymatics wavetables from their Animal pack. I've used the Animal pack. I think it's pretty old now because I think I started using them probably over a year ago now. But they're some of my favorites. They have been for a while, and they're awesome for growls. Like the lions, the alligators, the boars, stuff like that. great for growls, great for this kind of shit. So we've got that set up, and it's got an asymmetrical type here. We're like on the A7 Plus. So I'll kind of mute a couple things and show you how I did it. So here's just the one wavetable playing. And it's just got this one LFO, this LFO1 here assigned to the wavetable possession, and the level, that's kind of giving it that movement. And we've also got that through our effects here. For the hyper, I've got that assigned to my my second macro here for the wetness here. Sorry, the mix, not wetness on this one. So you can actually, right here, you can see it's the wideness from that macro is making it go. So it would be like assigning an LFO to it. I've just done it with this macro here. Like I'm sure you've seen in a lot of the cymatics tutorials on how to use macros, that kind of thing. And then I've got the size of the dimension expander cranked up to 50, and the mix is at 0%, because I find if you crank up that mix, it's kind of like using the dimension expander plugin on the insert. It can get kind of messy, and it's a bit much. It's too much. So yeah, we've got that dimension expander, we've got the unison on 4, and the rate, we've got the rate at 40%, detune at 25, and then we go on to the distortion. I like doing the tube distortion. This is actually something that my buddy Kona showed me as well. He loves using the tube distortion and just cranking the shit out of it. I didn't go quite full on this one, but we've got it turned off here for the off, rather than pre or post. And then for the drive, we've got the drive at 65%, mix at 31%. And I've also got that assigned to a macro down here at the bottom left, which again you could just do by assigning an LFO. So really the drive is modulating up a little bit here. As you can see when I play it, you'll be able to watch this little knob and you'll see that the distortion is going up on both the drive and the mix levels. It's going up a bit. So I could just turn down if I removed that crunch macro completely, I could just crank them up a little bit myself, but that's the way I've done it. And then just the EQ is pretty simple. Not a huge difference with it on or off. We've just got this, I don't know why I've got something modulating on this top one because the gain is 0, so nothing is doing this one. We've just got this one, it's kind of giving it a little boost in the mid-lows. So the frequency, we've got at 107 hertz. And that's being modulated by LFO1, so we've got the frequency. It just moves a little bit with the actual sound of the growl. So not a ton complicated with that. And then just the compressor. I'm not a wizard at compressors or anything like that, so I just kind of mess around until it sounds good to me. So for this sound, we've got the threshold at minus 12.5, with a 4:1 compression ratio, the attack is at 90 milliseconds here. The release is at 90 milliseconds as well. And our gain is at 14.6 with the mix cranked all the way up with that multi-band feature turned on. So without the compressor, it'll sound like this. Then we turn that on. So just kind of, beefs the sound up a little bit. And essentially the compressor inside Serum, I think I've been told it's basically the exact same as the OTT compressor plugin. So it's basically you're just like using another OTT on the sound if you've got it on the mixer as well. But more TT is always good. So yeah, so that first oscillator we went over, just the Lion wavetable in one of the Cymatics Animals packs. I'm not sure if it was in the bonus or what. With no voicings on this one. I usually don't do a lot of voices for my growls. I kind of do them this way and then kind of make them wider with the dimension expander. The wavetable positions at 197 with this one LFO. Automating up all the way to 22. Oh yeah, I guess you might have noticed I got a cool Serum skin. There's a cool company that does those. But yeah, sorry, oscillator B. we've got is a sludge crank, which I'm pretty sure this is one of the stock wavetables in Serum. Maybe not. I'm not exactly sure where this wavetable came from, but it's just kind of like another grainy type thing. A lot of the cymatics growl wavetables, you could probably get a very similar result, or the animal ones. It's just kind of got that sound. We've got the wavetable position on that guy at 144, and I've got that modulating all the way up. So, the value is 44, and then for this one, we've got the wavetable type at quantize, and we've got this sitting at 39% with the LFO modulating it downward to -33, and then we've got just this level. We don't want it quite as loud as that oscillator A, because oscillator A is kind of carrying the sound. This is just kind of beefing it up a little bit. So this second oscillator is really subtle, but it's just adding another layer to it. So then from the processing to the wavetables in this filter here, I like using the HN12 filter a lot for my growls. It's really nice at kind of letting the nice frequencies through, and you can cut some of the bad stuff. So here's the sound with no filter. And then when we turn that back on, just kind of smoothens it out a little bit, makes the whole movement nice and more flowy. So I've just got that affecting the first oscillator because I wanted that second oscillator to kind of be a bit more gritty. So we've got the filter cutoff on this HN12 filter sitting at 113 hertz with the modulation of LFO1 at 40. The resonance at 36% with the modulation at 32. The pan we're going to leave because I don't want it to mess with any of the panning. The drive is at 39% with no modulation. The frequency is sitting at 52%, and it's modulating down. This amount is -29. This frequency knob is nice because it'll allow you to, you can kind of move it around until you get that nice flowy growl sound. So you can kind of play the note and then mess with it until you get that sweet spot. That's obviously where I like this one. So that's that first growl sound. But you'll notice when I play this patch, that's not how it actually sounds in the track. So I'll show you why that is. So that's the sound, how it actually sounds in the track, but when we play it, it's more just this. And that's because I do not like doing my my pitch bends actually within the Serum plugin. A lot of guys do. They like going in and modulating the master tuning or the coarse tuning of the actual patch. I don't like doing that because the way that I do it with my sub, this is another thing that people were asking me a lot about. They asked me how I get my movement to be so perfect with my synths and stuff, and that's because I modulate the pitch of those things outside of the, I guess, native plugin, if that makes sense. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So rather than, a lot of guys will do the pitch modulation of their synths like this, in Serum they'll go into the matrix here, and they'll assign an LFO to the master tuning of the synth and crank that up. So then your sound would sound like this. So now you're getting obvious pitch bend within the synth, and I guess you could do that, and you could, if you did your sub in Serum, which I personally don't like doing just because Serum is a little more CPU intensive than something like 3XOSC, which is why I do mine. So you could just have the exact same modulation, LFO shape on your sub in Serum as you did for whatever synths you were doing. But that's going to get kind of tricky if you've got, 5 different growls in your track, all with different pitch modulations, and then you're going to have 5 different sub patches. So the way I do it outside of Serum is we'll turn this off, so we don't want anything affecting the master tuning of our actual synth. So we're back to that. So in FL Studio, obviously you'll be able to do this in whatever your DAW is. I know Ableton's got some good pitch automation you can do for your instruments and stuff. So if it shows up like this for you in FL Studio, you don't have the full plugin menu here, you just want to hit this gear and this pitch knob right here. Right here it says pitch and then it says range. You want to make sure that this range is cranked up to 12, positive 12. Because what that is saying is that your pitch bend now, this knob right here, will be automating the pitch over the span of an entire octave, so which is what we want. And you also need to make sure, excuse me, for Serum, like the pitch bend parameters are down here, so you want to make it the exact same type deal. You want to be bending the pitch in one full octave. So make sure your upper volume here is 12 semitones, and then your down value is minus 12. So that's going to show, again, you're going to be automating an entire octave, which is what you want. If you don't have these values here set correctly, then when you bend the pitch, you're going to notice you might think it's not bending enough, or it sounds kind of weird. And that's because it's only going to be bending, between whatever you put it. So if you put it 5 and 5, it's only going to be bending the pitch throughout 5 semitones, which is ideally not what you want. Maybe you do, maybe it'll sound cool, but this is the way I do it for everything. So once you've got this set up and this set up, you're ready to go. So the way I've done it, the way you can set this up, I usually have my drop synths pattern right here. So I've got them playing there, and then I usually have it set up so that there's a few tracks below it. That's going to be all of my automation for my synths and my sub bass. It just gives me, it's close to my actual pattern, and it'll give me a little bit of room to do what I want. So what I want to do here is I've got my automation clips here, and the way you can set that up is, so just like this, if we're going to automate this first growl, we want to go back into the Serum patch. And then right up here, this little pitch knob, we want to right click and select Create Automation Clip. So now that automation clip, for some reason, I don't know why, FL Studio kind of just places the automation clip wherever it wants in your pattern. So we've got this right here, Growl 1 Channel Pitch Envelope. I'm just going to move this one because that's the one I already have, but I'm going to show you how I do it here now. I'm also going to move this sub one because I'll explain how they relate to each other. So now we've got our growl here, but it's kind of boring. We want to automate the pitch. This is something I do a ton. A lot of people say they love my growls because I overuse the shit out of them. I always do, down bending growls or up bending growls, that kind of thing. But I love doing them because it really sounds nice when you got the movement with the sub. So we'll just cut this automation clip a little bit so we can work with it. Okay, so we've got our automation clip here. This growl is playing on these first 2 beats. So we can just highlight that area. Now with this Growl 1 Channel Pitch Envelope, this is where we're going to get the cool bending sound out of our growl. So you can basically a lot of it is going to be trial and error for you, kind of figuring out what sounds cool and what doesn't sound cool. So we'll just draw some points here and see how it sounds. Generally, I like kind of having my growls pitch up and then down. Pitching down really, really makes it kind of sound cool, so maybe we'll just start like that. I'll put a point right at the end of these 2 beats where the growl plays, and then just drag it down. Maybe push this up a bit and see how this sounds. So for that first beat, not really much is happening, but you can kind of hear the sound pitch down and get a little more like deeper and more vocally because of that pitch bend. Okay, so now we can maybe try to get a bit more crazy with it. Maybe for the first beat, we want it to pitch up and then down. So we'll try that. So I mean, already, I think that sounds a lot cooler than just this. So it's starting to sound pretty cool. So what I've done for this actual sound, we'll just recreate the shape that I made for this one. So this right here, this growl 3, that's the actual automation clip that I had. So I always have it start at 50% because that's going to be the bass pitch of the patch. And then so I've got it on the first, this first beat here, the first half beat. I have it pitched up. Actually, it's the first quarter beat here. The volume with this little bend here is sitting at 15%. And then I have this one, it pitches down towards a second beat. At 16%. So that first beat will sound like this. So that sounds cool. And then for the second beat, I have it pitched back up. It might help you out. I always have my automation clips end at 50%. That way, as the track progresses, I know that my sound is, once the clip is done automating, it'll reset to there's no pitch bend on the clip anymore. If I have it sit like this, like at the bottom, the next time that growl plays in the playlist, unless there's an automation clip, it's going to be playing at an entire octave lower, so it might kind of confuse you and you don't really know what's wrong. So I always like setting my automation back to 50% on the pitch bends just to kind of stop that from happening. So for the second beat, we have it down at 0, and then so great, that's how the synth in this track actually sounds. So cool, I like the way that sounds. That sounds cool to me. Now what I want to do is I want to have my sub bass do the same thing. And that's super easy to do. So I'll go into the pattern again. We'll open up our sub bass patch. I already went over how to make it, just extremely, extremely simple. We want to go to the pitch range in this, and actually 3XOSC doesn't have, like in Serum, it's got the pitch bend at the bottom left corner. It doesn't have one of those, so to do it with the sub, the way I've done it in this 3XOSC patch, this just has to be at 12 here, and we're going to want to do the same thing. So just right-click our pitch knob, and we want to automate that. That way, our sub bass is playing the exact same as the bass synth. So this is going to be, it's one whole note, but it's going to be bending the exact same as your sub, which is going to sound really cool. So right-click that and create automation point. So we've got the sub pitch envelope down here. Just drag that wherever you want. And now the way that I did this forever, because I just didn't know it was possible, is, I could just look at my values on this growl automation clip and make them the same, or we can do it way, way simpler, and you double click your automation channel here for this growl, double click that, and it'll bring up this window, and you want to go up here to this drop down menu and hit this, hit articulator and go to copy state. Then you can close right out of that, and then you're going to want to open your new automation clip here for the sub. The same way, double click it. Open up articulator here, and you're just going to do the same except paste state. And there you go. It's the exact same movement as that growl. You can look at that. It's the exact same, so the movement is going to be the exact same. I'm just on my laptop, so I can't hear a ton of the sub bass through the speakers, but if you're on a good system, you might be able to, or you'll be able to when you figure it out yourself. But now that sub bass is moving the exact same as that growl, which is going to sound a hell of a lot cooler than if you just have it playing just a 2-beat sub bass patch. It'll sound great on a good system. You'll really, really feel the movement of the synth, which sounds really cool. So that's that first growl with that first sub bass and growl automation for the pitch. So now I'll go over the next couple sounds here and how I automate one single patch to make a lot of variations and stuff through the drop. So yeah, I'll play this drop pattern here. So this second bass here, one of the main basses in the entire track, is this guy right here. It's not overly complicated. It's just like an FM bass. This first oscillator here, I have no idea where this wavetable is found. It's called Psy. My friend sent this to me. It's a wicked little, nasty little wavetable. But you can use a lot. It's not a huge deal what wavetable it is. A lot of the Cymatics packs have some really cool FM stuff. So I've got this Psy wavetable with an LFO shape like this. And for these basses, I've got the voicing unison up 4 on this one and 8 on this second one that we're FMing from. Actually, the second one could probably be at 1 because it's not actually playing. But yeah, the wavetable position 1 here with the LFO value is 19, so it's just going up, and it's FMing from B here. So this basically is all going to be for you trial and error when you're making an FM bass. A lot of it is finding that sweet spot. So just play around with this till it sounds good. So we've got that LFO modulating the amount there. Again, that's going to be a lot of it is trial and error to see what sounds good. I found the sweet spot on this one was having the value at 36. And then for our FM bass, the oscillator that we are FMing from, I liked for this one, the mini bass one is pretty cool. That's just one of the stock Serum wavetables, and we've got that wavetable here sitting at 50, the wavetable volume, with a bend minus type, sitting at -11 with the LFO shape modulating all the way up. And again, we've got that HN12 filter. Again, this is kind of nice for letting everything come through the way we want it. And then for processing on this one I've got, I don't know why this filter is turned on because it's not there. This has that distortion technique with tube just cranked all the way up. Really giving it a nice crunch, just a nice little solid push for like the grittiness of the sound. Now we've got this EQ, you can see how it's moving. Again, a lot of the EQ is going to be, your ear, whatever sounds good, and finding a sweet spot. So I've got this down here. I've got it starting at the lower frequency at like 90 hertz, and then that LFO shape is modulating upwards, so you can actually see it move here, giving it just a little boost as it moves. And then this top one, I've kind of got this bottom EQ and this top EQ going against each other. So as the sound moves, the highs get boosted in kind of the second half of the sound, and the lows get boosted kind of the second half of the sound. If that makes any sense, you can see what I mean when the shape actually moves here. But again, that's all going to be completely to ear, to whatever you guys think. And then the compression settings, again, just do what sounds good. They're probably the exact same as they were for that growl. We've got the threshold at minus 9.4 dB with 4:1 ratio, attacks at 90 milliseconds, releases at 90 milliseconds, and our gain is at 17, and you can kind of crank that up to whatever you have sound good. So really, there's not a ton going on in this bass. It's pretty standard FM bass. A lot of the grittiness is coming from that distortion cranked all the way up. I like to use a little bit of white noise. I like using the bright white. Just one of the stock noise samples here in Serum. So I find it kind of really brightens the high end up in a nice way. It's not overpowering. It's not hard on the ears. And yeah, it's just kind of make it seem a little wider as well. But yeah, so that's mostly what's going on in that bass. Not overly complicated. I'll show you exactly how I have this automating and stuff throughout the track now. So in that first pattern, there's only 3 different patches. One of them is that main one that I've actually got just modulating the tempo quite a bit. And yeah, I'll show you exactly how I do that, because not a lot of people really know how to do this, but it saves a lot of CPU rather than cloning your Serum patch, changing the LFO rate, that kind of thing. So we can see I've got this LFO2, LFO1 rate envelope here, and you can do that by doing this. Open up your synth again. And FL Studio's got a nice feature where you can pretty much make an automation clip for just about anything. And the way you do that is, so I've got my patch open here, and say I want to automate the LFO speed of this sound, which I do. That's what I've done in the track. So you're going to touch that. Just move it around. You only need to touch it and move it once. And then you're going to go up here under Tools. You're going to hit the Tools button here. Last tweaked. And then you're going to hit Create Automation Clip. So what that's telling FL Studio is you want to make an automation clip that is going to affect the last thing that you touched. So the last thing that we tweaked was that LFO rate inside that synth. So let's hit that. And again, that's going to bring up an automation clip in your playlist. FL Studio kind of throws it wherever. So now we've got it sitting right here. This is the new clip. So I'm just going to move the one that I already have pre-made here so I can actually show you how to go about doing this. Okay, so we've got our automation clip in here, and we're ready to actually automate the sound. So now it's basically playing the exact same thing here because we don't have any automation clip going on. So we want to actually alternate the LFO speeds and kind of give it some nice variety. So let's spread this clip out a bit more. So we're going to play this little pattern here, and you'll actually be able to hear the whole thing. So it's kind of a little boring, and we want to do something about that. So rather than making a new Serum patch because we want to alternate the speed of this LFO, you've got this clip here. So now you're just going to want to basically, again, this is a huge trial and error thing. I've spent hours doing this before to make cool patterns, and you just want to create points along the pattern, or you want to change the automation. So maybe we want to have it play one value for this bar or for this beat and then change it right here. So now we can add another point right here and drag it so it's perfectly level with that one. That way it changes right away. And maybe we want to make it a bit faster and see how that sounds. So we would obviously want to bring this point higher than the value of this one because we're going to want to speed it up. And then a nice way I just do this to make it easier, I always copy this value of this point and paste it to where I want the next change to be. That way I know it's the same value. So you just do that by right-clicking the point and go to copy. So now let's hear how this, just a quick modulate or a quick automation on the LFO sound. So that's kind of cool. Rather than it just being the same rate like this, we've actually got some cool variety going on in there. So maybe we can actually we're going to try to add a little quick duck here in the automation and see if that sounds cool. So we'll see how that sounds. So that sounds kind of cool. It kind of ducks it out. Maybe we don't want it to cut the sound that slow, so we'll boost it up a little bit and see if that sounds a little better. So like that, it's really simple, but now you've got 3 different LFO rates going on, and it just kind of sounds cool with a nice little bit of variety, right? So that's something that I like to do a lot, and it saves a lot of CPU because you don't have to just clone your serum patch to make a new instance with a new LFO rate. So that's something that's really handy. I'll just bring back the automation clip that I actually had in here before. So that's how I've originally got it going here. You can see the automation and you'll hear the sound change whenever there's a difference in the pattern here. So it's nice little handy feature like that, and that's going to save you a ton of CPU and add a bit of variety to your drop, which is going to keep a listener interested in your track and keep going. So I'll show you how I do my sub as well to kind of just move with sounds like that, like the stabby LFO type thing. I don't do much with that. I keep it really simple. So we'll just open up my sub bass patch here, and we'll actually look at my pattern. Excuse me. So you'll see the pattern here. The first 2 beats is that growl. So obviously that particular sound is 2 beats long, and then the rest of the pattern is just this little stabby LFO type stuff going on. So you'll be able to hear it, and you'll be able to watch the piano roll. So I just draw in the notes. I don't like drawing in the notes for like a 1/16th rate LFO, because when the sub starts getting, like the notes start getting that small and that choppy, I find that they kind of lose a lot of their presence. So this is as fast as I'll draw my LFO rates. So you'll be able to hear, for the really quick sounds, I still have a longer LFO or a longer sub bass note. If you listen to the actual track, you'll be able to hear that the sub still follows along really nicely with those stabby, choppy LFO sounds, that kind of thing. And it's just for the really, really quick ones, you probably won't even notice that the sub isn't playing that exact pattern because it's still very similar, but it's still really present in the mix. So that's how I just do my sub for like the quick sounds like that. I really just draw in the notes. I leave a little space between them. That way it's actually kind of noticeable that it's like a choppy sound kind of thing, rather than, you know, you could just drag the note out and have it go right into it. But I like having it so it's, like I said, it's noticeably kind of choppy. So yeah, we'll move on a little bit more with a couple more sounds in here. So this is the next sound here. It's kind of cool. I guess it's like a little weird chunky thing. It's a fairly basic sound. Again, it's another FM bass. The only thing I've got going on in this one is that I'm using the second oscillator, and I'm FMing from B. I might eventually put out like a pack of all these sounds just so you guys can have, because these walkthroughs I kind of want to cover more than just how to make this sound. So this is something I can maybe do in a pack or something. But there's some more cool sound automations I want to show you in this track. So again, it's another one of the Cymatics Animal wavetables here that you can grab from one of their packs, and all the processing is probably pretty similar with like distortion, hyper, the dimension expander, that type of thing. This has a reverb filter on this one. You can get a lot of cool results using that. But there's some more important stuff I want to cover in this, so we'll skip the rest of how to make this sound. So again, here for this second section of this drop, this is again, it's just that same first growl patch. We're just automating the pitch differently. You can see that here with these two clips. So I showed you guys how to do that. Real easy to do. This again here is that main bass in this track. This is just the LFO rate. It's being automated, so you can hear it change as the pattern progresses, and you can actually watch it change with the automation clip. So it's really handy because, you know, there was a time I used to, if I wanted a bass to go, you know, like da na 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 na, I would have to make a few different patches, and I would just change the LFO rate on each, tell them how to do this. This saves me a ton of time and a ton of CPU, and you can get some really cool sounds by just dragging these values to, you know, stuff you might not think would sound cool, and then you get some really cool choppy patterns going on. This last bass in this pattern here, this just growl, is just a really, again, a simple patch. This is with the stock wavetable that comes with Serum, just the Reese mess. This is actually an FM growl, which usually I don't do a ton of the time, but it's no unison voices on that one, because I kind of like the growls to be have a little more mono presence, and then spreading those out with the dimension expander. Like I said, there's some more cool stuff I want to do, so I won't explain exactly how I made that particular growl. We've got this lead right here at the end of the pattern. That's just playing a really, really quick scale. I thought it would just be something nice to go along with that vocal sample playing in this part of the drop. So we just got that, and then it goes into the second part of that drop, which is the same. Again, this is where we start seeing a lot more automation clips for different sounds, because I like to get that choppiness and that LFO going. So you can hear the variations going on with this bass here. It says Muncher, that's what I named the bass, but you can, yeah. Just something that you can make a lot of different sounds out of by just using that one patch, is automating the rate, or you can also automate anything. So you can make cool sounds by automating like the FM amount, that type of thing, and get some really cool stuff. So that's that second part of the drop. Again, it's just using that first growl patch with a couple of these stabby LFO things, automating a lot of the movement with those. So we get to the third section of this drop here, and we introduce a couple new sounds. This first growl here is a little different. So I guess I went ahead and named this one Sick Balls. This is one oscillator here. I'm not exactly sure where this wavetable came from. There's a good chance it's one from one of the cymatics packs. We've got the cool LFO shape here, which is basically giving the sound its entire movement. So you can make anything sound cool in Serum, just making cool LFO shapes. The way we've got this one set up, the wavetable value here is 172 with that movement of the LFO1 cranked up all the way. It's an asymmetrical plus minus type, and that's we've got that cranked all the way to the left with the modulation all the way to the right. And then I have it automating or modulating the level as well, because that's how I want the actual movement to come in the sound. So it sounds kind of messy like that, but if we actually modulate the level as well, it gives it that really nice, choppy, really distinguished movement. There's not a ton going on for the processing on this one. Again, that dimension expander, the same settings as I used on that previous growl. Mix at 0%, but I've got it set to a macro. So the mix basically would be going up to, 40% on here. 40, 50, the size is right in the middle, and the mix is all the way down. This distortion, I'm actually using the diode 2-1 with it not cranked overly a ton, but again, I've got a macro assigned to it so you can see the value of where that distortion would be going. That's just giving it that nice, again, a little push to the crunchiness. And then for the EQ, we've just got a little bit of the lower mids boosted here with that LFO shape, modulating it so it kind of moves with the sound. And then I just ducked out a little bit of the high end around the 3000 range, just a slight duck there. And the compressor, probably the exact same as mine. Threshold at minus 12.5, 4:1 ratio, 90 milliseconds on the attack and the release. And then the gain is just however loud you want to crank that up. So that's that sound, and then we go into a different stabby LFO sound that I do a lot of automating on. So we can see that here again with this LFO automation clip. You can hear the sound go from really quick stutters to really slow, longer notes, and it gives it a lot of nice flow in the track and spices things up a bit. can look at that patch too. I'll show you guys that one. It's really similar to that first FM bass I made. So again, this is using that psi wavetable. It's basically set up the exact same as that first bass, just I use a different oscillator B with maybe a couple different values, but then again with all of the automations going on, we can actually see it here in the LFO shape area. You can actually see the LFO speed going all the way from 1/16 to 1/2, and that's what's giving it so much weird variation in the sound, which is pretty cool. Again, a lot of that is just trial and error, me just trying different values in that automation clip to see what sounds cool. And then for the second section of that drop, we've got the same thing, except I do a little bit more. I actually go in and do a bunch of pitch automation with that synth and the sub bass. So you can see we've got the pitch going up here, dropping here, and then it climbs all the way up and then comes back down.
I don't wanna be alone.
So that's pretty much the sounds and how I've got everything laid out throughout that drop, and then it just brings it back to that first section. And then that first section plays. I'll show you a nice way to transition from your drops to your breakdown section, or if you want to bring back your intro section. That's a good way to do things. So the way I've done that here is this last section here before I go from drop into the breakdown, I'll play it.
They say you. They say you. They say you. They say you. They say.
So a little trick that I like to do, I use it a lot to go from my drop section into, a section that is not nearly as hectic. Maybe it's got a lot less bass sounds. It's just a nice transition tool. Is I'll do an EQ automation, and I'll filter it so it kind of filters my basses out and slides in nicely to that next section. So I'll show you exactly what I mean there. So you can hear that sounds kind of nice. I'll show you how I did that. So from going to just our normal basses on my bass group here, I've just got an EQ right at the end of everything. And I just take a low pass filter and just automate that all the way down until it sounds nice to my ear. But that's a nice little way I like doing transitions, so you can play it all together and you can see how that sounds.
They say.
Rather than without it,
They say you.
it's kind of just a really heavy bass sound, and then it kind of sounds abrupt when it changes there. So that low pass filtering the synths, I think sounds really nice.
They say.
So before I showed my how I process all my synths, and that's just ignore these two EQs here because they're turned off, they shouldn't be there. I've just got that OTT, that dimension expander, and that EQ we went over. I also route those to another channel here called bass group, and all I'm doing with this one is right at the top I just have a really sharp low cut at 90 hertz. So this is just any low frequencies that are somehow getting through that top one. It's just going to make sure that they don't come in. And then for this particular track at 6,000 hertz, I just took the high shelf down a little bit just to take any harshness away. It's probably not really noticeable, if noticeable at all. But yeah, that's how I went about doing that. And then I have this reverb here And it's just a fruity reverb too with stock settings with the wet barely turned off because you don't want to drench your synths in reverb. You just kind of want to have a little bit there so that it just kind of flows together nicely. And the wet value here on this guy is, yeah, like 15%. This reverb is turned off all the way. That's just something I forgot to take off this channel, so that ignore it. And this is one plugin that I actually, of course it wants to stop when I open my free plugins. So this is a really nice free plugin. It's called A1 Stereo Imager. It's really cool because it basically, you can take any signal you want and you can decide what frequency you want everything to remain in mono. So I'll just open it on another channel here, and it's free. You can just Google A1 Stereo Shaper or Stereo Imager, whatever it's called. Great, okay, this free plugins just don't want to work today. I'll open this up on a blank session, and then I'm going to go over to the YouTube link here and answer a bunch of your guys' questions. So this stereo control plugin, for some reason, doesn't want to open up in that really high demand session. This is a cool plugin because it's got this safe bass feature, which you can hit right here. And basically what this means is everything under this frequency knob is going to stay in mono. So if you want, you can crank it all the way up to 500. And so basically that means anything you throw this on, this signal now, everything below 500 hertz is going to stay in mono, which is going to be really nice if you're worried about, a little bit of your mid signal being lost. I do this on all my basses. I usually set the frequency to 300 or 400 hertz, something like that. It's a nice way to, keep it safe, and nothing is gonna, it helps to keep it in mono. I find it's a really simple plugin, and I like using it quite a bit. So that plugin is free. I'm just going to reopen this project here. That's pretty much the core elements of this track goes as far as the sound design and just the overall layout, that kind of thing. I'm just going to hop over to the stream link now because for some reason, it didn't want to open up on my laptop here. And I'm going to answer whatever questions you guys have for 10 or 15 minutes, if that's cool with you guys. So if anybody wants to ask anything in the chat now, I will go through here. Okay, so the first thing here, I hope he shows the mastering part before this goes off air. Mastering, basically for this track, like I showed right at the start, I don't do anything as far as the mastering process goes. I just have my OTT compressor with my limiter and the EQ. That's all I do for mastering. I don't go over and above that. This isotope plugin here on the master chain is not actually doing anything. It's bypassed. I use this as a visualizer just to compare elements in the track, but it's not actually doing anything. The only thing turned on is the EQ, and there's not a ton going on there. But as far as mastering goes, all I do is just an OTT, an EQ, and a limiter. So it's super basic. There's obviously a ton you can do with other plugins, but I've never really dove into that kind of thing. Okay, so yeah, any more questions? We can do this. Past and present productions. Dude, you hit pretty much everything I wanted here. Awesome, sweet. Okay. How you process your basses in the mixer section. So yeah, I went over. I'll do questions for about 20 minutes. Like I said, they didn't want to open up on my other monitor, so I'm going to do this. The processing on the basses, like I showed you, I've just got this channel here with the OTT compressor, and it's these settings, this dimension expander plugin, and just this EQ. That's all I do. I don't actually do any post-processing effects. For this track, I used to do a lot, not so much. So then after this, I just have it routed to another mixer track that just has this low cut with that little reverb and that A1 stereo control plugin. But there's not a ton going on in there as far as actual distortion or anything like that. Do I fine tune my automations on the go, or do you tweak them later? I just go over exactly like whatever sounds good at the time. And if it sounds good to me, I don't really need to go in and tweak anything else. What are my thoughts or opinion to get the drop hit harder? That reverse kick technique is something that I think really does a lot, like I went over at the start of the stream. Right before the drop here, this sample.
I don't wanna be alone.
I think stuff like that makes it hit a lot. A lot of other stuff that I find gives the drop more impact, like I said before, is having your sub bass in the intro maybe a little quieter than the actual drop and the rest of the track. I think that kind of makes a big difference, and it sounds good that way. Kind of makes it sound like it's a lot more impactful. Besides from that, there's not a ton that I do. Yeah, the reverse kick thing is really cool. Definitely recommend doing that. Um, I'm just looking for more questions here. Yeah, the subtle white noise does make a really big difference. Have you ever tried a lower attack and release on the low frequencies? Yeah, I've definitely tried a lot of stuff. For my specific settings, that's just what I've found to sound good. But again, a lot of that is just it's your ear. Whatever sounds good is what you want to do. So if you can get better results with a lower attack and release settings, obviously give it a shot. But yeah. That's just usually that's the way I make my stuff. Do I have a go-to project set up when you open FL, or do I always make stuff from scratch? A lot of the time, what I'll do, I'll take a track that I really liked, the old, like what I really just liked, the mix down of that kind of thing, and I will, for instance, highlight the entire track and delete everything except maybe my drums or something for a 60-bar pattern, delete the entire layout of the track, delete all of the actual like plugins, that kind of thing. And then from there, I'll just, because like my drum levels will be somewhere I want them, and then I'll kind of build the track around that. Plus I already have like my side chains set up, so just that kind of thing I won't have to do. So once I delete everything in that session, then I'll go back to my file here and just save as a new project. So I've basically got a blank template where I can kind of go to town and just start from scratch without having to do simple stuff like setup, sidechain, and that kind of thing. As far as what I start with on a new track, it differs every single time. Sometimes I'll start with a drop. Sometimes I'll start with an intro melody with some chords. And sometimes I'll just like mess around with some drums. It completely depends. Every every track, like the workflow will be differently, and I don't have an actual set out way that I do things. Yeah, past and present. So you don't do anything to tame harshness in terms of multiband on your bass group. Not really in terms of the actual compression. Like I said, I go into like the EQ section for my bass group, and in this first EQ, you can see like the highs are cut quite a bit here with them rolled off, and then in this second bass group, I'll just roll them off a little bit more. So I usually just do that in terms of EQ, and actually like within the EQ inside Serum, I'll kind of tame the harshness a bit in there, but I don't do a ton in terms of taming it via compression, if that makes sense. It's mostly EQ, but I definitely do, I do go out of my way to avoid high-end harshness, that kind of thing. Because for me, there's nothing that'll make me shut off a track quicker than if the high end hurts my ears. That's something nobody likes to hear. And if it sounds a little harsh, like in your headphones or in your studio, chances are it's going to sound a lot harsher when you play it on a live system. Do you separate sub basses and synths on this track? Yeah, so I showed you, I've got the way my sub bass set up. I've got my sub bass channel here, which is that 3 times oscillator patch. That's routed to this, just with that multiband compressor and an EQ, and all my synths are on here. I never do my sub bass within an actual bass synth sound. I always, like you can see on the sub or on the bass group here, they've got a hard low cut at 90 hertz. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's a little lower, whatever. So there's no sub frequencies coming in through any of my bass synths at all. So I always do the sub separately. I find you have way more control that way over how the sub sounds, and it's just, there's no unnecessary low end within the actual bass patch. Yes, I hear so many people who boost those high end frequencies in terms of saturation to get that little bright effect, but sometimes it's just way too much and it hurts. It's no good. Where is it okay to clip? Please answer this. I don't think this is a question that can be answered because every producer will do things differently. Some guys you can see in my session, I've got like my kick drum and my snare drum. There's a couple elements that are clipping. Like you can see the levels here, some of it's going into the orange. My master obviously is not clipping because it's got that limiter on it. But I also have some friends who, when they're mastering, they'll have their master clipping 6 dB, but their track will be as loud as a Zomboy track and almost as clean, and it sounds terrific, but it's clipping 6 dB, which, in terms of rules, it should not sound good and it's not proper, but really there's no rules in producing. If it sounds good and there's nothing distorting, then you're doing it right. And if it sounds great, then whatever, that's cool. So I don't think there is a right time to clip and a wrong time to clip. Yes, exactly. DC. Clipping is only clipping if it's audibly clipping. I wouldn't stress over, unless you can hear audible distortion. If it sounds good, you're doing something right. How do you sidechain and what is the reason for it? So I showed my sidechain earlier. I have it set up. I won't go over it completely in depth again for the guys who already saw that. If you want, you can go back to around the 20-minute mark of this stream and you'll see it. I use Fruity Peak Controller, and basically all it does is it ducks the volume of everything that I want. You can actually visibly see the volume. So everything being sidechained is assigned to this fader, and you can see it duck. And the reason for that, for ever sidechaining, is so that you can have elements of your track punch through other elements. Like, for instance, you want for dubstep or bro step, whatever people want to call it. the heavy drums are a huge part of it. So if I don't have side chaining, if I turn this off, you can see how muddy everything sounds in the mix.
Be alone.
So it's a huge difference in terms of how hard you can get your kicks and your snares to punch through, that kind of thing. It makes all the difference. So whether you use a compressor that I've never done, I always do my side chaining like volume automation. That's the way I do it, and it's a really, really important thing to do. Yeah, 6 dB. Some of my friends who have the nicest mix downs will send it to me, and they'll be like, "Why does this sound good to you?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, this sounds great." And they'll tell me, "Haha, it's clipping 6 dB," and it's just how it works. If it sounds good, it sounds good. Song length. Generally, no, I don't really have a preference. I kind of like to keep mine around 4 minutes-ish, something like that. But I mean, it's not a huge deal. I will rarely ever play a track for more than, like, I'll never play a track live through the second drop. It's usually like most of the first drop, and that's it. So it's not a huge deal. It's all personal preference. I like 4 minutes, but some of my favorite tracks are 2 minutes, and yeah, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, Daniel, it makes a massive difference. Side chaining is one of the like super important things on how to get a nice sounding dubstep mix. Can you show us your Neuro bass from What to Do? Not in this section because I'm trying to stick with this one project for this track. Maybe in the future I can go over that. That actually was one of Conus's basses for that collab that he resampled a ton on, so I don't know exactly how he did it to a key. How do you back up your production resources? I have a desktop computer that I do all my main production on, so I've got everything on there. I've got everything on the laptop that I'm using right now, which I use this laptop mostly for producing on the road and that kind of thing. And I've also got an external hard drive that I back up everything onto. So I've got it on 3 different computers, so I'm not overly worried about losing all my stuff. I've got it in 3 places, so yeah. I have never actually used a real guitar on one of my tracks, so I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. I have not processed real guitar for my own tracks. It's something I'd like to do in the future, but I have not done it yet. I've been producing seriously for about 5 years. Probably 6 if you count kind of randomly opening FL Studio once every few months, that kind of thing. But 5 years of actually seriously doing it. I've actually never used a launch pad, so I have no idea what what those do. So I'm not sure what they would do. When is the Infinite sample pack dropping? I am not sure. Maybe I will do one during the holidays, or maybe I'll do another one through the Cymatics guys if that's something that they're interested in. I'm not sure, but I've got one sample pack and 3 Massive and Serum packs online right now. 2 of them are through Cymatics, and the other 2 are just floating around on SoundCloud. If you're interested, you can just search those up. How do I do my collabs? It depends. If they're FL Studio users, I can just go back and forth with project files, that kind of thing. If it's a user on Ableton or Logic or something, then we just go back and forth, bouncing stems. Obviously, the project file route is a lot easier, but yeah. What effects do you use in the drop? Yeah, I can definitely show you that. It's really simple. So in the drop, as far as sweeps and effects go, I don't do a ton. Basically, the only sweeps I've got in this track are when I transition from drop section to drop section, I have just a white noise sweep. So really not a ton going on. That's pretty much it. I just use them to transition from section to section to section. And for this one here, I've got just a riser. So nothing too crazy going on there. I don't really want to pack too much stuff in there. And yeah, I just try to keep it simple in terms of that. I'm not sure when I'll be on Discord again. How can you stay attached to one genre? Yeah, so yeah, I do pretty much almost exclusively make dubstep. It's just what I enjoy doing. I've tried doing a couple other styles of stuff. It didn't turn out as good as a lot of my dubstep stuff, so I kind of stuck to it. I'm actually doing a lot more stuff now. I've got some future bass type projects in the works and that kind of thing. So hopefully I'll be happy with those and those will come out. But yeah, dubstep for me is fun. I'm not overly bored with it, so it's good. When did you release music online in your serious 5 years of producing? I started releasing music in my first week of producing when it was terrible, when it was god awful, because at that time it was fun and it was exciting, and what I thought was cool, I wanted to put on the internet. So I did it right away, and yeah, it was terrible at the time. That was my first alias ever. My producer name was Dubsack because I thought that was cool when I was 16, 17 years old. And I don't know, it's fun to put your stuff online. So I wouldn't be ashamed of putting anything online when you're first starting. It's, the main thing is still you're having fun with it. So if you make something you think is cool, show it off to people. It doesn't have to be incredible, especially at the start. No, every effect Joss boot is not the same volume. I just, I'll go in here and actually you can see right here there's an automation clip for this riser. But I just change the volumes like to fit each different sound. I'll just do that by adjusting this volume knob in here. It's just really, really easy tweaking stuff. Where do I get my vocals? Sometimes from sample packs, sometimes from vocalists. I've got a bunch of tracks that are all done coming out in the near future with some really talented vocalists. But yeah, a lot of the time sample packs are great. The cymatics packs have some wicked vocals, all the new like vocoder loops, that kind of thing. They sound awesome. So I definitely like using those. Yeah, they're great. Sample packs are great. Vocalists are great. It's whatever. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you can jam out and like something you make, I'm sure someone else will. Yes, Trance, I will definitely do future live streams. Like I said, I couldn't get this comment section to open up while I was streaming here, so I'll definitely do more if the cymatics guys will have me, and I can be more engaged in the chat during going over the actual track. But yeah, next week I'm going to be doing a feedback one as well, so that'll be fun. But yeah, definitely will do more. Glad to help out the FL guys. If today the automation and that sub kind of stuff really helped out, I'm glad. Studio gear, I've just got like a MIDI keyboard and my SoundCloud and monitors. I don't have any hardware, if that's what you mean. Oh, the Ghost Inside, that'd be cool. I can still do about maybe 10, 15 more minutes of questions if you guys have anything you want answered. I'll keep going through here. That's a good question. Any suggestions for getting music out there? Does age matter in the industry? No, I don't think age matters at all. As far as getting it out there goes, most important thing is make some quality music, make connections, network. Start relationships with the right people. Don't just copy paste, spam your SoundCloud links to everyone on your friends list. That's never good. The cymatics guys really covered it a lot, providing value to people. Ask people what if you can help them. Just make good connections and hit up everyone you can. Hit up a YouTube channel with 10 subscribers. Hit up a YouTube channel with 100 subscribers. Just make connections with anyone you can. That's like, it's super basic and super straightforward, but really any promotion is awesome promotion, especially when you're starting. Hit up everyone you can, and don't be spammy with your music. Approach it professionally, and don't be pushy, that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. 16-year-olds are producing for Trap Nation. Age is just a number. Does not matter. I know some incredibly talented kids that are 4 or 5 years younger than me. If you have a track that you're very confident about, what's the best way to approach a label? So basically, I think the Cymatics guys recently put out something on Academy.fm that was specifically for this topic on how to approach labels or A&R. Basically, once you've got a contact for them, just approach them, send an email, briefly introduce yourself, maybe where you're based out of. Say, I have this track that I thought would fit with the label. It might be something you guys are interested in and wanted to shoot it your guys' way. Thank them in advance for their time and for checking your submission. And if they get back to you, great. If they don't, that doesn't mean it was shit or they didn't like it. Every label's got a ton of submissions. Just in the future, just send a similar email, hey guys, wanted to send you another track I thought might fit with the label. Here's the private link. Thank you very much for your time. Sign your name, that kind of thing. Just don't be pushy with it, but definitely recommend waiting until you're really confident in something, because if you write a track in your first week of producing and you send it to Never Say Die and Schism checks your promo and it sounds like you've been producing a week, there's a pretty good chance that the next time he sees your email in his inbox, he's never going to open it. So it's probably best to wait until you've got that kind of confidence behind a track. What is your promo email? I will write it here in the comments. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me in an email, I might be delayed on getting back to you guys. As far as questions go, I might not be able to answer everything in email just because my emails get swamped with a lot of stuff and I'm busy a lot of the time. But if you want to send promos in the future or just quick feedback, that kind of stuff that can be answered quickly rather than more in depth like these streams, yeah, you guys can email me. That's totally cool. Just obviously don't go ham with it, and don't give it to everyone. No, you can send me other music you've produced. It doesn't have to be dubstep. Kovacs, no, I've never used the FL Studio Patcher. I've seen cool things with it, and you can kind of do some really cool routing with it, but I've never actually dove into it. That's a very good question. How do you manage relationships in music? I'm not overly great at that yet. A lot of the time, since I've made music my full time job, it's definitely a bit of a struggle to still make time for going to hang out with your friends, making time for your girlfriend, whatever. Um, it's just a good balance. I've gotten better at it now because she works a job, so she's gone most of the day. So I try to put in 10 hours a day in the studio from Monday to Saturday, or at least Monday to Friday, usually Saturday as well. And then I can kind of hang out with her at night. And then for like friends and stuff, I don't really go out a ton. I don't like to spend money on going to clubs, that kind of thing. But at the same time, if you don't go out and see anyone, then no one's going to like you anymore. So it's good to work hard, but definitely balance comes with it for sure. How did you manage that monster sponsor? That was just a thing where I woke up one day and I decided to hit up Monster, and I don't know. I guess they saw that I had some sort of following, and they hit me up, and it was it was that easy. Hey, how do you arrange your drops? So I kind of touched that earlier in the stream. I'll go over it again here quickly though for you. Basically, I have a pretty straightforward structure that I do for my tracks, especially for the drop. So I'll usually go the first the first 16 bars of a drop will be, I've even got markers here, drop section 1. So that'll be like the first two patterns. Pattern 1 is different than pattern 2, and then I'll kind of repeat those with slight variations, and that'll be the first 16 bars of the drop. And then I will arrange another 2 drop sections, as you can see here, 2 and 3, and those will be 2 different sections, each one with maybe some new sounds, new basses, that kind of stuff. And then a lot of the times I'll repeat and go back to that first section. I've got it labeled here as drop section 4. So usually my drops are either 32 bars long, or they'll be 32 plus 16, 48. Something like that. But I keep it relatively simple and I keep that pretty consistent with a lot of my tracks. So yeah. No problem, man. I'm glad to answer your guys' questions. Go-to environment to produce music. I like producing at home in my studio, where nobody bothers me. I way prefer using monitors than headphones. That's just a personal thing. But yeah, that's what I like. I'm not huge. I don't really like producing on the road or in airports or in hotels, but I do it just for workflow kind of thing. Next project for stream, Fatality? Maybe. Yeah, maybe if you guys like that one, I could do that. Yeah. Any tips or go-to rules for mixing dubstep? Not really. Like I said before and touched on, if it sounds good, yeah, the same thing, mix and master process. Like I went over that twice in this stream. All I have as far as mixing and mastering on my master channel, I'll open that up again, is just an OTT compressor, just with these settings, an EQ just rolling off the lows and the highs, and a fruity limiter with default settings, just making sure that my track is not clipping over 0 dB. This isotope ozone is not doing anything. It shouldn't be here. But that's all I do for mastering. Nothing crazy, but a lot of my friends do the same. Some of my friends do a lot of insane stuff with 8 different plugins and a lot of Pro L EQs and all the ozotone stuff, but I am not super confident in those plugins, so I don't want to try overdoing them and making it sound a lot worse than it would be without it. What do I think about hybrid trap? It's sweet. It's cool. I guess maybe I kind of have some hybrid trap stuff-ish in the works. Headphones, I use Audio-Technica MH50s, I believe. Yeah. Do you have a 9 to 5 you have to juggle with music? No, not anymore. This is my full-time job now. I've actually never had a 9 to 5. My last job that I worked at for 3 years, where I just stockpiled my money and saved as much as I could, was I worked 4 12-hour shifts at a sawmill running equipment. So I was doing 44-hour work weeks, and it was double shifts, so 2 weeks nights, 2 weeks days. And I just did that for 3 years. I hated it, but it gave me enough money that I could leave and confidently do this. And now I'm kind of just barely at the point where I can make ends meet just off music. Bandcamp, I've actually never used Bandcamp. So personally, I'm not sure what kind of results people see with that. I release 95% of my music independently. I do a free download on SoundCloud. with the download gate, and it's on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all of that. So that's the way I like doing it. I don't know what kind of money Bandcamp sees for people, but it's definitely cool. I know some people really like it. I know Midnight Tyrannosaurus did his albums through Bandcamp, and he's obviously doing very well. So you might have some awesome results with it. Any more production or music or business questions, whatever, is still we'll still go for another 10 minutes here ish if you guys still got questions. How do you manage social media? Do we have to post everywhere to engage with fans? I would say yes, absolutely. I try to stay really consistent on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Um, it's big, man. I mean, like the the market is so saturated with so many people that you're being shown so much stuff on your Facebook and Instagram feeds every day that if you're not consistent, it's really easy to slip out of people's minds or get forgotten or become irrelevant. So I think it's super important. Be as consistent as possible with your releases and just your posts on all your social media outlets for sure. It's very important. I've never tried to produce music for video games like Varian, no, but I did have two tracks picked up from THQ Nordic. Alone and my collab with Kona Senpai will be in the new ATV versus MX game coming out next year. So that was kind of cool. I didn't produce it specifically for a video game, but it was licensed for it. So yeah. Carlos, I did. I went over a bunch of sound design stuff in the first 2 hours of this stream. This is supposed to be done half an hour ago, but I couldn't have the question window open, so I'm just going now and answering more questions for you guys because I could not open that during the actual project file. So if you wanted to see more sound design stuff, just go back in the stream when it's posted, and you'll be able to see a lot more in-depth stuff. Sound design is just all practice, all practice. And the cymatics packs are a really good way to learn sound design. That's how I learned a lot of Serum. And I'm still learning. I still look at all their packs to see what kind of cool stuff Drew and the other sound designers have done. Um, he really knows his shit. All of the producers for cymatics are really good sound designers. So you can definitely reverse engineer a lot of their stuff. That helps a ton. YouTube tutorials are obviously great as well. And then from there, you can just take all that knowledge and just mess around and try new things. And everything you try is just going to be an addition to everything that those guys have all shown you through their sounds. So it's definitely just a big practice and trial and error thing. Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that, Carlos. Just don't want to go over stuff I've already gone over for some of the other guys in this stream. Networking and getting in touch with big artists. I mean, a lot of good ways is definitely if you're confident in your music and you think it's the same quality or something that those artists would like, you can do a lot of stuff. You can hit guys up on Twitter, just say, "Hey man, I'd love to send you some tracks. Do you have a promo email?" And a lot of the time they'll get back to you, and that's how you can start relationships like that. I made a lot of relationships just hitting up artists on Twitter and just kind of saying, "Hey, I'd love to send you some stuff." There's a ton of artists I've hit up and I've never heard back from, and that's fine because if I send, if I hit up 20 guys and two of them respond to me and one of them actually opens my email and says, "I really like your stuff," that's awesome. So there's one relationship right there. So yeah, just asking guys for their contact, a lot of the time it works. I haven't had a track mastered by a label probably in the last 2 years. I just do all my own stuff, and usually the label says that's fine. Um, but yeah, so I haven't had to do that for a long time. Horizon, I have no idea. My Twitter was being super weird for 3 months. I wasn't showing up in mentions, and it was unfollowing my entire Twitter followers list every day, and I don't know why it was happening. A lot of labels do have mastering engineers who kind of do all their onboard stuff, though. Grants, if that answers your question. What do you need to keep in mind before getting signed to a label? Definitely don't be in the mindset of your first label release. You're going to see thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars because, your first label release, it's an incredible track and it's signed to, Spinning Records or something. You're not going to see a lot of money for it. And it's cool if you've got a label support, and but independently, I prefer it just because I have complete control over all my music. I get to decide when I post it, when I release it, how I release it, who I can send it to, licensing everything. It's really cool doing it yourself. If you can, push it hard enough yourself, then it's awesome. How can you collaborate with vocalists? You can a lot of time just hit them up. Maybe some will hit you up, and they'll send you vocals, and then you can go from there. Not overly complicated. Did you ever get discouraged with producing when you started? Yeah, absolutely. I still get discouraged all the time. It's um, when you've got a creative job that's your full-time job and you're constantly comparing, I'll finish a track and I'll A/B it to a lot of stuff, and maybe I'll be really happy with it, and then I'll compare it to a Zomboy track, and then I will be incredibly unhappy with it, or I'll just, I'll spend a lot of the time, I'll spend 40 hours on a track or a few weeks, and then I'll just kind of go into the studio the next day and listen to it, and I'll be like, wow, this is nowhere near the quality I'm happy with, and I'll scrap the entire thing. And then I will be really down for a week or whatever, but I don't know, it's just all get back at it and write something cool, and just as long as you're still having fun with it, that's what's most important, right? Did your parents support you when you decided to make music full time? Yeah, they actually did, because they know that I did it properly. I didn't just leave my really well paying job with no money saved. I saved enough to that. Basically, when I left that job, I had budgeted that I could live for 18 months with making not a single penny, and I would still be okay. So obviously, I'm not making $0 a month. So I definitely gave myself a really big safety net when I jumped doing this full time. So they knew that I was going to be okay, and they know that I love what I'm doing and that I'm doing it properly, and that there's a potential I can make a career out of this. So they've always been really supportive that way. 80 hours a week, yeah, that is a ton of time a week. That's impressive. Good for you. Definitely make sure that you're not overdoing it though, because sometimes if you're forcing it, you're not gonna see great results. Um, how much time does it take to finish a track? Completely different. Um, Sometimes it'll take me 10 hours. Sometimes it'll take me 80 hours. It all depends. Every track is different. Yeah, no problem. Any newcomer artists to recommend? My buddy Conus is one of my best friends. His stuff is awesome. Um, any other newcomer guys? Actually, my friend Brandon Holman. I did one track with him. He's this kid who's got hardly any followers. He's really talented. He's really good. Um, I don't know. I have so many talented friends that, yeah, those are two guys definitely. So if you want to make your tracks like Zomboys, that's get better at everything: mixing, songwriting, mix sound design, everything. Zomboy is one of the best guys for sure. So that kind of, you need to practice everything. Yeah, wow, Horizon, that's a long time per track. Just if you're still new to producing, try to spend less time, because every track that you guys finish when you're still in the stage of learning and developing as a producer, every time you finish a track, you're going to improve and you're going to learn things and it's going to be better. So definitely try not to spend too much time. Like, just don't spend unnecessary time on it. Once you're happy with it, move on and start getting some new stuff rolling. I will probably wrap this up now. We've gone a bit 40 minutes over how long it was supposed to be, so it's 40 minutes of answering your guys' question. But yeah, I will be back next week doing a feedback stream. And if you guys want to see more of this, let the Cymatics guys know. We can do more project file walkthroughs, that kind of stuff. And yeah, we will. Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Sorry again about not being able to answer questions during the actual project overview. I'll get that sorted for the next stream, so I've got it on a different computer setup. But yeah, hope you guys liked it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Take it easy.